Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. But this is the night flight, so I guess I should say good evening and welcome aboard. We're going to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, but we will start off addressing a recent Frank Warren interview, trying to read between the lines and understand what all this means. Because he was asked by Kugan Cassius in an IFL interview the other day for comment on the apparent Derek Chisora Deontay Wilder fight. And he was very coy and simply said, I've got a contract with Derek Chisora. He wouldn't expand on that. And so Coogan said, well, does that mean you'll be involved in the Derek Chisora Deontay Wilder fight? And he just said, I've got a contract with Derek Chisora. That's all he would say. What does that mean? Does it mean that Frank Warren is blocking the fight? Does it mean that Frank Warren needs to get a cut of Derek Chisora's purse in order for the fight to go ahead? Does it mean he'll be involved in some way? Doesn't he have an exclusive deal with DAZN? Is he allowed to be involved in a fight on a different network? And I'm sure he's allowed to take a cut of Chisora's purse if Chisora has a fight on a different network, if that contract he's talking about is still valid. I speculated in the previous stream that what this might mean is that, well, first of all, Derek Chisora said that his contract with Frank Warren ended 2 months after the Otto Wallin fight. Frank Warren is saying there's still a live contract, and so I speculated that it might mean that Frank Warren's got options on Derek Chisora, or he's got, first right of refusal, matching rights, whereby if a different promoter approaches Chisora with an offer, Frank Warren has the option to match the money that Chisora is being offered. If he can't match the money, then Chisora is free to go and take that offer. Okay, that's speculation on my part. I don't know if that's actually the case in this situation, but I'm interested to find out what's actually going on here. The reason, as I said in a previous stream, that I like Chisora versus Wilder, even though it's way past its sell-by date, is because, at least for the time being, it prevents Alexander Usyk versus Deontay Wilder. So that's the good purpose that this fight serves, all right? As well as being maybe a fun fight between a pair of washed-up guys who, in their primes, were very spirited. Now, it might be a bit harsh to say Chisora's washed up. He's certainly past his best. But to say he's washed up probably is a bit unfair, because it's not like he's been getting knocked out left, right, and center. And he is coming off a string of wins against top 10, top 15 contenders. I mean, Joe Joyce was a top 10 guy when Derek Chisora beat him. Chisora was an underdog in that fight. I didn't think he would beat Joe Joyce. Against Otto Wallin, he might have been a favorite, but Wallin was ranked pretty highly. So Chisora coming in off much better form than Deontay Wilder. So maybe a bit harsh to say he's washed up, but you know what I mean? He's past his best, just like Wilder is. But yeah, big up everyone in the live chat. I'll read questions and comments about this fight. And then we'll get on to whatever topics you guys want to talk about. You got Ruz B, JR, Kropating, Gordon Dalglish, Tawheed, Muscle Factory, Gary Rickards, Anthony YouTube, Truth Channel, home of the Elucidator. We got the big bad, is it Bree or Bry? Sam O'Donoghue. There's David Hay, your mum at the press conference in Liverpool just popped into my head. Big up Dominica Rastafari, that's right. Linkage says Fisheye's going to court. Dominica says Frank back on Sky like the early 90s. We got Kieran Malcolm, Jay Krebs. We got Aiden, Trolls are Bad, Railway, and Boxing Fan. Yeah, big up everyone locked in. What do you guys think of this situation? Do you think Frank Warren is going to block this fight? Or does he just want his cut? Will the fight go ahead? What do you guys think? Could Frank end up doing what Sky did and show Chisora versus Wilder on DAZN pay-per-view like Sky did with Usyk versus Fury? What, you mean like a dual pay-per-view? Maybe, but is the fight big enough to warrant a dual pay-per-view? I'm not sure. We got Railway Boxing Fan. He says, did you see Wilder and Chisora on FaceTime earlier? I didn't. I'll have to check that out. Was that on Instagram? Big up Kieran Malcolm. Yes, let's run those likes up, folks. You can stick a like on this stream. It'll be much appreciated. 64 concurrent viewers, only 16 likes. Let's get them likes up to at least, let's say, 32. Thank you in advance to everybody. Tony S says, interested to see who Fish Eyes is going to line up Dylan with in April. Dylan really needs to retire. Paolo the Greek says, Warren won't block the fight. He obviously has no plans of his own for Chisora. He just wants a nice slice and options on the winner. Okay, Railway and Boxing Fan says it was on Chisora's Instagram account. I'll definitely check that out. Chisora and Wilder on FaceTime. Do I think the winner of Chisora and Wilder should fight Usyk, says Aiden. It's certainly not a fight that I would prioritize, but Chisora does have a pretty high ranking with the IBF. So if he comes through a Wilder fight, or if Wilder comes through Chisora, I guess they would put themselves in line for maybe a voluntary for the IBF champion, which is currently Alexander Usyk, unless they try to turn this fight into some type of final eliminator, which would be very unfair on maybe other fighters in the IBF rankings. Who will be on the Wilder Chisora undercard? Well, according to an article from the Mail Sport the other day, they literally gave a rundown of who is supposed to be on the undercard. So, for example, Vidal Riley is supposed to be on the undercard, as well as Harlem Eubank of all people. Not sure how interested people will be in watching Harlem Eubank fight, but there you go. That's according to the Mail Sport. Vidal Riley and Harlem Eubank. Harlem Eubank has been with the Sauerlands for a long time. And Vidal Riley has just signed a promotional deal with KSI. So make it out what you will. Obviously, KSI and the Sauerlands have been working together as well, right? On the Misfit shows and whatnot for a long time. In fact, let me get a graphic of Callus Sauerland up here. People always like that. Let's get Bricktop off the screen, get Sauerland back in here. People like these Sauerland thumbnails. There you go. Happy as Larry. Muscle Factory says, am I blocked? Well, if you were, you wouldn't be able to comment. So that answers your question right there. On the marching powder says the chat regarding Callus Sauerland. Clark versus White on the undercard. Well, apparently we're going to get, and this is not pertaining to this particular card, but just some British heavyweight boxing news. Apparently Johnny Fisher has accepted a fight with Jamie Shakiva, aka Jamie TKV, for the British heavyweight title. I mean, that's a knockout defeat for Johnny Fisher incoming, if ever I saw one. Not that Jamie TKV is some massive puncher, he isn't. But Johnny Fisher just looks so vulnerable. He was always vulnerable to some extent, but I think even more so after that second Dave Allen fight. We got pound for pound. He says, all aboard for the night flight. Bricktop and Del Boy, a proper Cockney beef. And down goes Johnny again. I mean, TKB nearly got Fraser Clark out of there. Obviously, Fraser Clark's been chinned plenty of times. Obviously, once in the pros, but plenty of times in the amateurs. But he's a far better fighter than Johnny Fisher, Fraser Clark. And he nearly got taken out by TKB. So Johnny Fisher will do very, very well to not get knocked out. If he can last the distance, maybe. Hang tough. Is that a possibility? Because Shakiva, to use his proper name, isn't a seek and destroy merchant. Shakiva's really a boxer. So maybe he won't pressure Johnny Fisher to the same extent that Dave Allen did. Maybe he'll give him more time and space to get his shots off. We'll see. But I do expect Shakiva to win that fight. Railway Unboxing fan says, Fisher versus TKB, why didn't Allen get the title shot? I'm not sure. Maybe because Allen's coming off a defeat. You'd have to ask the British Boxing Board of Control. Their rules, as far as who gets the next fight for their title, aren't as clear as they are, and it's not like the other sanctioned bodies. The world sanctioned bodies rules are clear, but they're a lot clearer than the British Boxing Board of Control. They just meet with their members, their board members, right? And decide amongst themselves. I haven't found any written rules that decide how they come up with these fights. There isn't like an official British Boxing Board of Control heavyweight or, any of the weight rankings. So it's kind of seemingly done on the fly. Railway and Boxing fan says, why do you think Vidal and Harlem fight? Well, I'm just going by what was said by the Mail Sport. That's just what they said. I've got no idea whether that's the case, but this is what they're reporting. And they're reporting that the Chisora Wilder fight is pretty much done. I can put the screenshot up on screen here. You can see yourselves here. That's it right there. That's a screenshot from an article. Welterweight star Harlem Eubank, the cousin of Chris Eubank Jr., is also expected to appear on one of the biggest cards of the year with broadcast giant Sky Sports showing the event to UK fight fans, while Keller and Nissa Sauerland are understood to be promoting. However, Chisora has promotional obligations to Queensbury, and all parties have been notified. All right, and the first part of it, where it talks about Vidal Riley, is right here. Excuse me. Yep, right here. You can see there it says British Cruiserweight Champ. I'm talking from the bottom paragraph now. British Cruiserweight Champion Vidal Riley, a rising force in the division, is understood to be lined up to feature on the undercard of the co-main event over the Easter weekend. So you have it. Muscle Factory says, Hatman, why doesn't Jai Opetaia just vacate his belt and fight his way into a mandatory to force the Ramirez fight? If they vacate, then it's a win-win. Because Opetaia wants to become undisputed. So if he vacates, he's one step away. He's like taking a step backwards as far as becoming undisputed. Because it was always his goal and his dream to be undisputed cruiserweight champion. So he needs to keep hold of the belt for that reason. And by the way, I watched Dana White at the press conference following the first Zoo for Boxing event. And he says he doesn't want to work with the sanctioning bodies. But then he was asked a question by another journalist who said, can we see a scenario where the Zuffa belt is on the table at a press conference, but also the WBC belt. And he said anything is possible. So he's kind of contradicting himself all the time. And obviously, Jairo Patera, after signing with Zuffa Boxing, has said that he's going to get his dream to be undisputed. So let's see if Zuffa Boxing can actually deliver that for him. Oh, excuse me. Railway Unboxing fan says, who do you think Vidal and Harlem fight? Sorry, I misread your question. Who do I think Vidal Riley will fight? I'm not sure, to be honest. I can't see him fighting a Pat Brown right now. Maybe he'll fight the guy who, last I checked, was cruiserweight champion. European cruiserweight champion. The guy's called Raphael something. He beat Clark, not Fraser Clark. What's his name now? Chev Clark. He beat Chev Clark, if you guys remember. He's a Portuguese guy. He's called Raphael something. Very, very strong guy. Okay, the box says Riley is fighting Masternak. There you go. Won't be for the European Cruiserweight title then, if that's correct. I'm assuming anyway. Tony S says Vidal versus Alois will be a fun fight, but I would have Vidal winning quite comfortably, but the press conference will be gold. Yeah, I mean, Vidal Riley is making out as though Alois Jr. don't want to fight. But previously, Alois was making out as though Vidal didn't want to fight. But Vidal, to be fair to him, was basically looking to leave boxer. So it was in that context that he kind of was non-committal on fighting Alois Jr. I can understand that. Harlem Eubank, who could he be fighting? I don't really care, to be honest, who Harlem Eubank could be fighting. I've never found him entertaining. I've never thought he was going anywhere. And his behavior after the Jack Catterall fight was quite bizarre. Mesquia, thank you, Tony. Yes, that's right. Is he called Rafael Mesquia? He's very strong, that guy. Very, very strong. Muscle Factory says, do you think the sanctioning body should be more strict? Force rank 2 and rank 3 guys, for example, and if they decline, you drop in the rankings also are always enforce fights against the person above. Well, they do that when they order eliminators. That's exactly what they already do. But only the IBF, some say the WBO enforce it relatively strictly. The others barely enforce it at all, particularly the WBC. I mean, dear, oh dear. Their mandatory system is a joke. But yeah, more strictness all round would be great. Big up Striker in the live chat. Big up Striker every time. So, we don't just have to talk about boxing if you guys want to get into, oh, it's Leonardo Mesquia. There you go. Leonardo Mesquia. I must be thinking of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Leonardo, I mean, these are Renaissance men, but Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, Michelangelo. There you go. That's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Leonardo Mesquia. The boxers apparently Opatira is fighting Noel McCallion in a unification in Vegas, March 8th. They faced off last night at the Zuffa Boxing event. Well, if Zuffa Boxing are delivering that quick for him, then it was obviously the right move, wasn't it? Because Eddie Hearn wasn't able to deliver, and he had years. Okay, that's interesting. Muscle Factory says, had a weird simulation theory experience this week, by the way. Okay, care to share it? Shout out to everyone in the live chat, locked in, on board the night flight. We can get into whatever topics you guys want to get into within reason, of course. Striker says, I'm going to be in Vegas that week. If Jai fights no, I'll watch it. How long is the flight from down under to Las Vegas? I'm assuming it's several flights, or at least 2 flights. Okay, Idol says, Hatman, I know you're no Trump fan, but surely he won in 2020. Even normies in Bluetown think it was off. I voted for him 3 times, but I agree he isn't what his fans think. Well, yeah, it certainly seemed to be dodgy, didn't it? It certainly seemed to be a bit off, that 2020 election thing. Big Up JR says, movie talk, who delivered the best Robin Hood movie? I watched Prince of Thieves earlier on, and that's my pick. Kevin Costner is a bit wooden, but it works. I think that might be the only Robin Hood movie I've seen, other than the Disney cartoon. I think the only Robin Hood movie I've seen is the Kevin Costner one. Doesn't that have Snape in it from Harry Potter? Alan Rickman. That's the actor's name, isn't it? Snape. Doesn't he play the sheriff in Nottingham in the Kevin Costner Robin Hood? It's a bit odd having a guy with an American accent playing Robin Hood, though, isn't it? Okay, Muscle Factory says, was walking to the toilet in work up a set of stairs, and I noticed a small metal washer, on the left-hand side of the stairs. Went to the toilet about 2 hours later, and it was replaced with a polo mint. Okay. Same shaped object, exact same location, no evidence of the previous item at all, no joke. So what do you reckon? It's a glitch in the Matrix? Like in the Matrix movie? Muscle Factory says, could be total coincidence, but it was definitely odd. Oh yeah, Morgan Freeman. That's another thing about that one. Morgan Freeman's in it with an American accent. They did some weird movies back in the days. I remember, what was the Martin Scorsese movie about Jesus? What was that called now? The Last Temptation of Christ. In The Last Temptation of Christ, I swear down it had Harvey Keitel. I mean, how random is that casting? Harvey Keitel in The Last Temptation of Christ. Wasn't Christopher Walken in it? Tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm like misremembering here, folks. Last Temptation of Christ. Wasn't there Christopher Walken and Harvey Keitel? Like a damn Tarantino movie or something. What kind of casting is that for a biblical movie? Pick up Jupiter's string. Oh, William Dafoe, excuse me. It wasn't Christopher Walken, William Dafoe. But it's still weird enough. Yeah? It's still weird enough, bro. William Dafoe's face just doesn't fit in a biblical epic. Okay, Omar says, Hatman, what's more comfortable, trains or planes? Trains. Generally, trains are a lot more comfortable than planes, but then again, it depends on what class you're flying, right? If you're flying in first class on a plane or business class, then you'd say a plane. If you're flying like economy, a train is far more comfortable than economy on a plain. Wow. Music playlist says John Wayne once acted as Genghis Khan in a film back in the days. That's wild. Aiden says, what's your opinion on eating insects like grasshopper and beetles? I mean, I'd never do it, but in this part of the world, there are people that eat grasshoppers. I mean, in Uganda, they eat them, and they're a local delicacy, actually. It's not the only thing they eat. In fact, they only ever eat them maybe a couple times a year when grasshopper season comes around. I don't live in Uganda, by the way, but in East Africa, Southern Africa, grasshoppers and also caterpillars are a local delicacy, which, yeah, I definitely won't be touching. Big up Charles B in the chat. He says, I watched The Exorcist again recently. That is a brilliant film, best horror movie ever, in my opinion. JR says crocodile is actually not that bad. Yeah, I remember my brother had crocodile back in the days, and surprise, surprise, he said it tastes like chicken. Music playlist says all the other Mongols were acted by Asians, and then there was John Wayne as the leader. Joel Slatter says, Hatman, what do you reckon about Lucy Letby, guilty or a setup? To be honest, I've never really looked into the case. I know about it, the nurse and all that, but I've never really looked into the case to be able to give you an opinion on whether I think it's a setup or whatever. Sam O'Donoghue says, I'd hate to be starving and have to eat live insects and spiders. Me too. Mark says, The Thing is my favorite horror movie, classic. The Thing inspired a lot of not just movies and TV series and stuff like that. Like The X-Files, for example, was inspired. There's a episode, I think, in season 1 that was inspired by The Thing. But also, Dead Space was partly inspired by The Thing. Event Horizon also inspired Dead Space. It wasn't just The Thing. Omar says, my dad ate a whale and said it tastes like a combo between beef and liver. Rosby says, frog tastes like chicken, capybara tastes like pork, horse tastes like beef. Can we get away talking about 911? Probably not on air, no. I'll keep that one to Patreon. Charles B says snails are good. I'm not a fussy eater, but there are levels. I can't say I'll be eating a snail. I'll skip on the snails. But yeah, I've heard many, many years ago that frogs taste like chicken, or frog's legs. Because that was like a French delicacy for a while. I'm sure you can still go to some French restaurants and get frog's legs, but to my understanding, they don't eat that in France as much as they used to. Yeah, I remember the Tesco horse meat scandal. I don't think it was just Tesco either. I think like loads of supermarkets were doing it, or loads of food manufacturers were doing it. They were passing horse meat off as beef. Comfy Bold says, not a fan of either octopus or squid. So I've eaten both octopus and squid. I've only ever had octopus a couple of times. Squid I've had loads of times. I don't mind them. They're not my go-to, but I will eat them if push comes to shove. Gorguga says frog's legs is on the delivery app in Cambodia. Ros B says rabbit is delicious. Yeah, never eaten rabbit, but I'll be up for it. Weirdest meat I've eaten. I don't think I've ever eaten any weird meat, to be honest. Ed LB says frog is a big thing in Louisiana. Well, presumably that's the French influence, right? We got Fernie G. He says, big up Hatman, just joined the stream. Have you talked about the Zuffa card yet? I haven't. We can talk about it. I didn't watch most of the fights. I just saw highlights and bits and pieces of it. And I did see bits and pieces of the main event involving, is it Callum Walsh? It's Callum Walsh, isn't it? And I don't know what Dana White sees in Callum Walsh, but he is not an entertaining fighter. This is the second time I've watched him now, maybe the third time I watched him now, and there is nothing entertaining about that young man. So if he's going to be one of the figureheads as far as actual fighters for Zuffa boxing, that's not a good look. Jai Opetaia, on the other hand, is a very good look, being like the face of Zuffa boxing, but Callum Walsh, nah. That guy could put a glass eye to sleep. Is it Gibbolad? Gibbolad? He says, I just lost my first amateur fight, absolutely gutted. I'm sure you're gutted, but loads of great fighters lost their first amateur fights, so I wouldn't be too disheartened. It's an experience, and you gain things from experiences. You know, even if you lose, you've learned something from it. Next time, you'll be less nervous. You know what I mean? It's trial and error. So obviously, you're not going to feel great about it, but try to put it in context. Try to understand that, as I say, great fighters have lost their first amateur fights before, even their first few amateur fights. So it's something you can easily turn around and just try to focus on the positives that you can take from it. Even if you took a beating in a fight, you could say, well, at least I've got out there under the bright lights. At least I know how it feels. And next time I won't be as nervous. Next time, do you know what I mean? There's always positives to take out of these experiences. So just look at it that way. Jupiter String says, what boxing rules governance does Zuffa boxing fall under, Hatman? Well, they basically have their own rules. I'm hearing that the Ali Act has now been successfully amended by them, so they can go ahead and, or has it? I'm not sure actually. Or is it the revisions to the Ali Act have been accepted, and now they're gonna try and pass it through government or whatever. I'm not sure which. Don't quote me. But as I understand it, that has to get done before they can implement what they want to do fully. But long story short, they're only going to have 8 weight classes. And so they haven't yet decided where Jai Opetaia is going to be. Presumably, there won't be a cruiserweight division. There'll be a light heavyweight division, then heavyweight. Maybe they'll change the division limits for some of these weight classes like they have in UFC. So yeah, Dana White did say there's going to be 8 weight classes. Big up G-Man in the chat. Locked in for the night flight. That's Liam Goff, big up. Tony S says, Sinners has been nominated for a record 16 Oscars. You know, let me say something about Sinners. It's been nominated for 16 Oscars. Has it won any Oscars or not? Has the Oscars been and gone? I'm not sure. I don't watch it. But I didn't find Sinners to be an amazing movie. It's okay. It's not trash, but it was just, you know, I think some people have gone way overboard with that film for some strange reason. Maybe the concepts in it were new to them and they found it so deep and profound that from their perspective, it's amazing and like a revelation. But for maybe an older person who's seen many movies like that and much deeper movies than that, there's not really anything groundbreaking. So maybe it depends on your age and depends on the kind of movies you've seen in the past. But for me, you know, Sinners was okay, but I wasn't blown away by it. All right, 1 second, peeps. Give me 1 sec. And we're back. Yeah, I agree with Afro Soul. He says, I'm not sure what the hype is about. It wasn't that good. I agree. You know, Sinners was not a bad movie, but I think people are going overboard. I don't know why it would be nominated for so many Oscars. Maybe that's just maybe that's a measure of how weak Hollywood is now. A movie like Sinners, which is, you know, slightly above average, gets all of this praise. Any guy says, I've heard Ruiz is fighting everybody recently. Fury, Usyk, everyone. Yeah. Maybe it's regarding, you know, the people involved in the situation. Maybe Dana White, if he is talking to Ruiz, you know, is the one coming up with potential matchups between this one and that one. And do you know what I mean? Yeah, I've seen Mr. Mercedes Striker. I actually watched that. It's pretty weird. I did think it was quite good, but very, very weird. I think somebody said that's a Stephen King story. And that fits because it was so strange. There were parts of it in the early few episodes of Mr. Mercedes that made me actually want to stop watching because it was so weird. For example, there's basically, you know, incest in it. And I was like, nah. Oh, wow. Charles B says, to put it in perspective, it got more nominations than Lord of the Rings. The Oscars is a farce these days. Yeah, that is a total farce. Sinners got more nominations than Lord of the Rings? That's that's crazy. Linkage says, have they got food delivery services in Zambia? Yes, they do. Was I ever a sneakerhead back in the days? Not a massive sneakerhead. I mean, I like sneakers, but I was never like one of these people that would queue up when the latest sneaker got released. I've never done that in my life and never would. But I like sneakers and I've bought a few over the years, maybe a bit too many, more than I needed, but I've never been like a hardcore sneakerhead, no. All I can tell you is that I do own a pair of Air Force, what are they called now? Air Force duck boots, the high top ones. They must have come out about 2017, 2016, 2017. There was a season there where Nike were releasing these duck boots, these like high top Air Force One, what they call duck boots. And I just loved the design of those. And so I bought them in kind of like a cream color, like an off cream color. And they were also available in white. The original version, I think, were available in like a military green, red, and black. The next version, which I have, which I think are the best version, were available in that kind of cream color. Then there was a cream color with a black toe box. Blue, I think, maybe in black. But I got them in the cream color. They're also available in white. And very shortly after they released those, they were selling for a lot of money. You know, like resale websites and whatnot, because they're a very nice design. Boxing Mind says, I thought they came out in the 90s. No, the ones I'm talking about came out in maybe 2017, there or thereabouts, 2018. Manu Minute says, hard disagree. Sinners is an all-timer and well-deserved. Yeah, I can only disagree. I mean, Sinners getting more Oscar nominations than Lord of the Rings? That's complete madness. Sinners is not that good, bro. It's okay. It's not a bad movie, but again, it's all down to perspective, and it comes down to preference. You know, it's all subjective, isn't it? Big up. G Money says, have you ever watched the TV series Da Vinci Demons? No, I haven't. Which streaming service is that available on? I used to have a pair of Jordans back in the 90s. And I think I do own a pair of Jordans now. Are they Jordans or? I've got some pair of basketball boots. I'm not sure if they're Jordans or not. But by the fact I don't know whether they're Jordans or not, I guess it kind of answers the question. I'm not really a big Jordans guy. But let me try and find a picture of the sneakers I'm talking about, the Air Force duck boots in that tan color. Let me try and look them up, put them on screen. So I can show you which ones I'm on about here. Okay, now that's the first version. Where's the second version? Are these the ones I've got? Let's say these are the ones I have. Let me try to get this image for you guys here. Well, I can see them on eBay and they're going for very cheap now. So I guess the high prices were a short-lived thing. I say very cheap. They're going for $100 here on eBay. Let's put this up on screen. But it came out, I want to say they came out 2018, 2017, somewhere around there. So these are the ones I have. You guys can see them there. They're the ones I have. They were the second version of those particular Doc boots. The first version, let me see. And again, they came in all sorts of different colors. These were the first version. You can see they're slightly different. I'm going to put the first version up on screen. One sec. Switch this up. That's the second version, the version I have. The first version are like these. These are the first ones. There you go. The box says not sure about those. Well, it's all subjective, innit? I like them. Fernie G says, you seem like more of a Tim's guy. I've never owned a pair of like the OG Tims. I don't like them. But I do have Timberlands, just different style of Timberlands, not like the OG Timberland boot. I don't wear those. But I wear Timberlands that are kind of similar to this, actually. But these are the ones I have, like this. And these sold out quick, by the way. people are not liking them apparently in the chat. I like them, but they sold out mad quick. Especially the white ones, because I was actually looking to get them in white, but the white ones sold out so quick. Yeah, these are the white ones. Let me find them here. Can I not put this into 1 second here, folks? Flip horizontal. Save. It's not letting me I guess it's the wrong format. I need to try and find a different picture of them white ones. Because it's not letting me drag it into OBS. Okay, let's try to get these ones in. Is this picture the right format? Don't mind if I talk to myself here, folks. Let's flip that, duplicate. Will this format will now work with OBS? I hope so. Yeah, this is the same trainers in white. These sold out so fast, it was very difficult to get them. Pick up James Clifford for the super chat. He says, movies this year I'm looking forward to are Werewolf by Robert Eggers, Dune Part 3, and The Odyssey by Nolan. Have a great weekend, everyone. Big up James Clifford for the super chat. Yes. I'm also looking forward to Werewolf by Robert Eggers. He's great at creating atmosphere in his movies. S says Rockports and Kickers were legendary. I don't think I ever owned a pair of Rockport or Kickers unless I had a pair of Kickers school shoes, maybe once or something back in the days. All right. Yeah, I've seen Robert Eggers. Which Robert Eggers movies have I seen now? Nesferatu, I thought was a good movie. The Northman, that's Robert Eggers, isn't it? That's a good movie. The Witch, that's a good movie. I tried to watch The Lighthouse, but it was so strange, I actually had to switch it off. Yes, I have owned the Averex back in the days, back in the 90s. Yeah, I remember K-Swiss. Yeah, well, pony trainers became popular because of the NFL. NFL were one of the brands associated with, excuse me, Pony were one of the brands associated with the NFL for a long time. Okay, now really going back. Troop and LA Knights. Also British Knights. There was LA Knights and there was British Knights. There was also a brand called SPX. Anyone remember them from the 90s? SPX, British Knights, LA Knights. Star Fox says, I feel like due to London slang, pony was a hard sell back in the days. Um, or in the black community, people really didn't use that slang, pony. We didn't really say that. So I don't think a lot of people in like the Caribbean community necessarily knew what pony meant. Maybe some of the older generation did, but like my generation, I don't think we even knew what pony meant. Too tough. Do you know what I mean? Big up James Clifford. What was my boxer style like as an amateur? Aggressive. Star Fox says British Knights weren't even British, just found out the other day. James Clifford says pony trainers were popular in Milton Keynes back in the 80s and the 90s, but Milton Keynes was not that popular. Let me look up where British Knights are from. Don't tell me it's like Bangladesh or something. One second there. Some random trivia. British Knight shoes. There they are. Uh, oh my gosh. Why do British Knights still exist? There's a website, BK Footwear. They still exist. Wow. Okay, they're an American brand. Ah, all right. And the designs were horrible too. I don't know why we thought they were cool back in the days. Founded in 83. Apparently still going. It says here British Knights was one of the first brands to recognize that the sneaker business was more about fashion than performance. By introducing a new collection 3 or 4 times a year, it became popular among 15 to 24-year-old males in urban communities. The slogan, "The shoe ain't nothing without the BK button," became the brand's mantra in reference to the diamond shaped BK logo that was in every shoe. So they relaunched in 2014. Mm. Now, speaking of trainers, right? Um, in the 1990s, it was the era of gimmicks for trainers. So, for example, you had the Reebok Pump, you had Nike Air, and the only kind of gimmick that has actually lasted in trainers is the Nike Air with the air bubble. Um, so there was Nike Air, there was Reebok Pump, which was one of the worst gimmicks ever. There was a type of Nike shoe which had like a reinforced toe section, a reinforced toe box. I can't remember what they were called, but I owned a pair. Um, which which trainer company had Hexalite? Because that was like their answer to air bubbles, right? Was Hexalite. Was it Adidas Hexalite? No, Adidas had Torsion. It was Adidas Torsion. That was Adidas's gimmick. Which one was Hexalite? Okay, Reebok Hexalite. That was it. Reebok Hexalite. Yeah. And it was like air bubbles, but these little hexagon air bubbles. Reebok Hexalite. And it was Reebok Pump as well, wasn't it? So Reebok were really into the gimmicky nonsense back in the days. I owned a pair of Reebok pumps. Star Fox says the Hexalite used to swell up sometimes. Yeah, I remember Hexalite didn't have a very good durability about them, you know? The Hexalite would get mashed up quick. I want to say that Nike, excuse me, Reebok Pump were actually partly inspired by Back to the Future. Remember there was a Back to the Future movie, Back to the Future 2, excuse me, where they had these like trainers that gave you a custom fit when you put them on. And I think Reebok, were they actually, I think there were Nikes in that movie. And I think Reebok kind of took inspiration from that and thought, can we do something like that for real? Like trainers that give you a custom fit, and they came out with a pump and they were trash. But, back in the days, we were sucked in. Fernie G says Nike came out with their own pump shoes too. Did they? I vaguely remember something like that. And Reebok pumps, didn't they relaunch Reebok pumps like over the past few years? And they go for a lot of money. That's right, Tony. Yes, you had to press the orange basketball to pump them. If I was an active heavyweight, what would my choice of glove be? Some form of rival Guerreros, because rival Guerrero come in different types of padding. So probably rival Guerreros, maybe with the stiff padding. Liam Goff says Converse are my personal favorites. I don't remember Night Joyride. No. Big up Ben Oldham. He says Feel It and Champion. Big up GMS Nightmare for the super chat. He says Calzaghe versus Tony, Eubank Senior versus Canelo, Frotch versus Ben. Mm, I got Ben over Frotch. He beat McClellan. He can beat Frotch, in my opinion. I got Eubank. Excuse me. I got Canelo over Eubank Senior. Tony Calzaghe. That's a tough fight. Um, that's a real tough fight. Maybe I'll go with Calzaghe on points. Big up GMS Nightmare. Ben Oldham says the most durable trainer ever made in the 80s and 90s was Dunlop. Ironically, they had a bad reputation. Yeah, Dunlop was like not the absolute worst of the worst in terms of reputation, but they were close too. If you were wearing a pair of Dunlops, you were getting rinsed in the playground. Simple as that. We've spoken in previous streams about some of the other snide brands. Dunlop was seen as them, but there were other brands that were legitimately terrible, like Mercury's. Anyone remember Mercury? Like you were down bad if you were going if you were going to school in a pair of Mercuries. Puma disc, yes, that's another one of the gimmick trainers from back in the days. Puma discs. How could I forget those? Gola, of course, yes. Pacer says Gola was terrible as well. So if you're wearing Mercury's, Gola, or anything like that, even Dunlop, you are getting rinsed. Nicks. That's a real struggle brand right there. Nicks. Nicks. Yeah, it's like a Timu version of Nike, but yeah, Nicks were terrible too. They were market crepes. Yeah, you would go in the market and you'd see them selling like Nicks and Nicks, Gola, Mercury. Big up Charles B for the super chat. That's my guy, Charles B. Big up every time. Much appreciated. Did you have any snide trainers back in the days, Charles B? Admit it. Did you ever find yourself condemned to a pair of Knicks? Maybe a auntie or someone like that thought, oh, buy little Charles a pair of trainers. He'll love them. Imagine that, unwrapping a gift, a Christmas gift. You're unwrapping it. It's from your auntie or whatever, and it's a pair of Knicks. High tech. Yeah, high tech weren't as bad as Knicks. Like high tech were borderline. If you had high techs on, you were borderline. You might just about be safe. But Mercury and Knicks and stuff like that, nah, bro. Dunlops, Gola. Yep, Gola. You could not be caught in a pair of Golas. Charles B said, I had a pair of Vans and my brother ripped the ish out of me. Fast forward a few years, I copped him walking in the same, copped him walking in with a Van bag. Oh, Van's bag. Damn. Yeah, I remember. I know Van's skater shoes, but yeah, Vans have never been struggle shoes though. They're skater shoes, but they're not like, you know, are they seen as nerdy or something? I don't know, but they're not seen as like struggle shoes the way Knicks were, Dunlops, Gola, Mercury. Yeah, they're like Skechers. Yeah, Vans are like Skechers. Sam says I had to wear some of my dad's Bruce Lee looking slippers to school because I couldn't find mine. Got roasted and asked why, or asked what brand they were. I didn't know, so I checked. They were grasshoppers. Grasshoppers? Grasshoppers. That's wild. How's this one for the old school crowd, right? Um, Surely they don't still wear. When I was in school, in primary school at least, for PE, right, physical education, we had to wear standard issue pumps. They surely don't still have those in school. Who even makes those pumps? And Americans might be thinking, because in America, pumps are like high heels. No, we weren't wearing high heels in school. Chill. This ain't no Diddy party. Um, no, these were like gym shoes, which plimsolls. Yes, plimsolls. That's right. That's another name for them, plimsolls. But we used to call them pumps, plimsolls. Crazy, right? Oh, they still wear them. They still wear plimsolls in school now? Are you sure? They haven't gone out of fashion? Like, in terms of school attire, they still wear plimsolls? No laces, right? Just like an elastic bit at the front. Ascot trainers. Yeah, they were diabolical too. Can you imagine naming a mascot to try and bolster up the reputation, the quality of what you would expect? But no, ascots were diabolical. Charles says, doing the egg and spoon race in your pumps. Yeah, plimsolls, but we call them pumps. Well, some people use pumps, some people use plimsolls. The same thing. Oh wow, Ben Odom says I made sure my son doesn't wear plimsolls. Who sells plimsolls? In fact, the person that sells plimsolls probably makes loads of money. You know, people that sell them probably make loads of money. For those who are completely lost right now, I'm gonna put a picture of these plimsolls up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Um, yeah, these are the kind of things we used to wear in school for physical education, PE, even on the field, running races in these. Can you imagine how crazy that is? Like ninja shoes. Yeah, so these are plimsolls. This is what we wore in school back in the days. Maybe they still wear them now. I don't know. Like standard issue for kids in British schools. We had to wear these. What would Americans refer to these as? Star Fox says standard issue prison shoes. Yeah, that's what we had to wear, bro. We had to wear these. Standard edition. Yeah, standard issue in British schools are these. Hmm? Bruce Lee shoes. There you go. Charles B says, bringing back memories. And these were all-purpose shoe because they could be used inside the gymnasium for climbing frames, for climbing up them ropes. Did your school have them ropes where you could climb all the way to the top? Do they still do it? They surely don't still do that because what if a kid falls? And when I was in school, I think a couple kids did fall, lost their grip when they were all the way at the top of the rope, close to the ceiling. Um, so these were all purpose. You could use them for climbing up those ropes, doing you know, different activities inside the gymnasium and also on the track. Yeah. Outside on the grass field, we would run the races and egg and spoon race, the sprint, the long distance, everything. We wore these. All purpose. Yep, the climbing frame. All the high technology. We didn't need any of that in our shoes. This is all that was required. BG says if you forgot your trainers for PE, that's the issue you get. Well, when I was in school, you weren't allowed to bring your own trainers for PE. You had to wear these. Yep, the wooden benches. That's right. The mats, the dinner trays. When I was in school, the infants used to have like plastic trays, like in prison, those plastic trays. But then, what is it? The infants and then the juniors. The juniors would have actual plates. So we had wooden trays and then actual plates. But for the infants, they would have these like plastic prison trays. Yeah, pull out the apparatus. That's what they used to call it. The apparatus. There you go. Yeah, that's what they called it. Apparatus. That's right. And the teacher always had a whistle on the field anyway, outside. The teacher would always carry a whistle. And in fact, I'm old enough to remember the dinner bell. Yeah. When I was in school, the teachers actually had a bell. They used to ring a bell, like a handbell. It was usually the sports teachers that had the whistle. Dinner ladies would ring the actual bell. Ding a ling a ling a ling. And you'd go for like school lunch where they would have watered down milkshake, literally watered down milkshake. Yeah, that's right. The trays used to have several different compartments, just like a prison tray. One of them for your main course, your dessert, a part for your drink, and then for your cutlery in the middle. So I remember the things I used to like in school. I'm sure they weren't very tasty, but um, sponge cake and custard. I remember that. Sometimes the custard was like regular vanilla custard. Other times it was strawberry custard or some kind of strawberry, and it didn't taste very strawberry like, but it was some type of like pink sauce that they put on your sponge cake. Other horrors from school were the ravioli was pretty damn horrible. I remember the chips were pretty decent. in my school anyway, when they would serve up chips. I'll go back for seconds and thirds on the chips. Indeed, glad tidings. It is weird how schools are eerily similar to how prisons are structured. I always found school to be like prison, particularly high school, secondary school. Yeah, I remember pink milk. I mean, their version of milkshake, which is like watered down to high heaven or to low hell. 1 second. Witness the fitness, the Crawford 10 liveth, one hope, one breath. Yeah, that's a Roots Maneuver song there. If you've ever seen the video, it's like an ode to everything we've just been talking about. The old school British primary school experience. Check out that video, Roots Maneuver, Witness the Fitness. The official video for that. Yeah, one of the most diabolical things in school, primary school and secondary school, was the toilet roll was like tracing paper. You guys remember that? Charles B says, I like the trifle. I don't actually remember the school trifle, but I remember the cartons of milk. Um, and yeah, the toilet roll was literally made of tracing paper. I mean, that was not designed, or at least it was not fit for purpose. That was wild stuff. That was somebody playing a practical joke or something. That was crazy. Yeah, I remember that. Margaret Thatcher, the milk snatcher. Yeah, I remember Banana Man. Banana Man. I was right around the time when Danger Mouse was still on and all that. Super Ted. Truth Channel says even the tracing paper toilet rolls had government property printed on it. Wow. I don't remember that, but I do remember that toilet paper. And it was diabolical. It was like some kind of sick joke. Nav says Hatman, can Adam Hamid win a world title? I mean, you can never say never, but based upon what I've seen of him, I seriously doubt it. I seriously doubt it. He looks trash. Danny says, which boxer would you consider a sadist in the ring? Um, Mike Tyson. You know, he was sadistic. Um, Maybe Wilder, Kovalev, those kind of guys. George Foreman in his prime. Big up Danny for the super chat. Umbongo. Who remembers that? I remember Umbongo. Lunchables, cheese strings, cartoonies, KP chop dips. You know, back then we were poor, so I didn't really have all the nice things in my packed lunch, which is why we tended to stay on school dinners. Let me tell you how poor we were, right? Back in those days. We couldn't even afford lunch boxes. I'm not even joking with you. Yeah. And that's why we didn't stay. I'm talking about me and my brothers. But that's why we didn't stay on packed lunches for that long, because you had a choice. You could go on packed lunches or school dinners. Um, and for the most part, we was on school dinners, not not packed lunches. Because at least for the first couple years that we was at primary school, my parents literally could not afford to buy us lunch boxes. So what we had, I'm not joking, we got rinsed for this at school. I had so many fights at school over this. What we had was empty margarine tubs. You know, like the big margarine tubs, like 2 liters of margarine. We had like empty margarine tubs and sandwiches in there. A couple of like fake, uh, what are them little yogurts that kids used to like? Is it? I can't remember what they're called, like Munch Bunch yogurts or something. But we had the fake ones, little fake Munch Bunch yogurts in there. Maybe one of those, an apple, a little snide sandwich, and maybe some like fake crisps or whatever. Yeah, something real basic. Truth Channel says bully beef and rice. Bro, we weren't even that advanced. Yeah. Our parents weren't even coming with like proper food in our lunchbox. We was coming with sandwiches, a bit of fruit. Petit Falou, that's the one. Those are those little yogurts, yeah. And the sandwich was always wrapped in cling film. Yeah, I remember Frubes. That was kind of after my time, though. I don't think they had those when I was in school. That came afterwards. That was like yogurt in a tube, innit? Frubes. Big up Green Entity for the super chat. He says Prime White versus Prime Tyson. Who wins? Who hits harder? Who's more skillful? Are you talking about Mike Tyson? Mike Tyson knocks out Dylan White inside 3 rounds. Who hit harder? Probably Mike Tyson, but it wouldn't surprise me if Dylan White maybe hit harder with a left hook because I know Mike Tyson fanboys have got some kind of delusional idea that he was the hardest punching heavyweight of all time. He definitely wasn't. He himself has admitted recently that he isn't even close to the hardest punching heavyweight of all time. He spoke about like comparing his power to an old George Foreman, and he said, I could never match a guy for punching power who has that much mass behind their punch. But I was effective because I was fast and accurate. So he was obviously a big puncher. But there are loads of guys throughout the course of boxing history that hit harder than Mike Tyson, even guys that most people had never heard of that hit harder than Mike Tyson. It's just that Mike Tyson was able to land the power that he had with accuracy and speed and timing. Um, so, I mean, maybe he hit harder than Dylan White, maybe he didn't, but I don't think Dylan White would go more than 3 rounds with him. He didn't have the mobility nor the defense necessary um, to make it out the early rounds, I don't think, nor the chin. Star Fox says, I scammed my school for free dinners for about 3 years and spent my lunch money elsewhere. Panda Pops, remember those? Um, the ice cream truck was like a big thing back in the days. Ice cream van, I guess they call it a truck in the United States, but the ice cream van, they used to sell all sorts of goodies, ice poles, different types of gobstoppers, penny sweets, ice creams, chalk ices. Big up Green Entity. Quick Save. What happened to Quick Save? Because one of the old school quick save type shops is still around, and that's Iceland. But quick save, does that still exist? That's right, Star Fox. Ice cream van rinsed us all outside the school gates. Nice hustle. Yeah, I remember. There was a girl who went to my school, and her dad was the ice cream van man. And that guy, I swear down, this is how different it was back in the days. This was back in like the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. This guy, the ice cream van man, whose daughter went to my school, he literally had a house with a wife. I think she might have been a stay-at-home mom. And he made enough money selling ice cream and that to school kids to support a house, kids, a wife, everything. Try doing that today. Big up Danny for the super chat. He says, out of Luke and Femi, who has the better chin? I gotta go with Luke. Yeah, I gotta go Luke over Femi. I mean, both guys go down, but Luke recovers much better. So I'm going Luke. Shout out to Southpaw Box. Yeah, Southpaw Boxer for the super chat. He says, if you start a YouTube channel today, what advice would you give yourself? Um, what advice would I give myself? Today, it's a very different uh, environment than it was when I actually started. So I'd say today, focus on live streaming. Because when I started YouTube, I wasn't doing any live streams at all, hardly. If I was to start today, I would say start on live streaming and clip your content and then re-upload the shorter clips. It's a more efficient way to work. Obviously, a lot of my audience doesn't like that type of short form content when I just clip the streams. I get that, and that's why I do dedicated from scratch videos as well. But for somebody starting, that's the avenue I would advise them to go down. It's just way more time efficient, live streaming and then just clipping the, making clips out of the stream. Charles B says, I remember that my maths teacher had a tuck shop in his cupboard. Come to think of it, he was a hustler. That's right. There was a school tuck shop. How could I forget about that? Yeah, there was a school tuck shop where they used to sell sweets in school too. Oh my days. What a side hustle that was. Dear oh dear oh dear. Big up Charles B jogging my memory. Yes, the school tuck shop. I think that the school teacher that I remember having a tuck shop was like was it one of the PE teachers maybe? I forget which teacher it was now. Yeah, the school tuck shop. Fleecing the kids for their lunch money. There you go. But I remember the tuck shop became far less popular as soon as they installed vending machines in our school. Um, yeah, they put vending machines in there. I forget what year, how old I was at the time, but it was towards the end of my time in secondary school. They put vending machines that sold crisps and fizzy drinks and all that type of stuff. Screwball, yeah, Screwball's an OG ice cream. For those who don't know, the Screwball was like an ice cream that came in a conical shaped plastic cone, and it had like a bubble gum at the bottom, like a kind of gobstopper type bubble gum at the bottom. Daley Thompson Lucas, there you go. Tony S says, I've never seen a Safeway in the UK. I heard they sell to gas stations and stuff. Oh, yeah, there used to be plenty of Safeways back in the days. Safeways, Spar Shop, Quick Save, all that. Star Fox says, we had a 4 to 5 tuck shop in my school, one for each wing, ran by sixth formers. Big up Green Entity. He says, Prime Mercer versus Prime Tyson, who you got? Definitely Prime Tyson. I think it'd be a hell of a fight because Mercer was very, very spirited. He had a good chin in his prime, but I got to go with Prime Tyson. I don't think Mercer had the skill really necessary to beat a Prime Tyson. He had the toughness, but I don't think he had the skill. So I'll go with a Prime Tyson in a very spirited and good fight. It might even go the distance, if not maybe Tyson on a late stoppage, but I reckon that'd be a good fight. BG says, you are old. If you remember Lucozade being in a glass bottle, that's a whole fact. And it tastes better in a glass bottle, by the way. Don't they still sell it in glass bottles, though? If they don't, that's how out of touch I am. But I thought, surely they still have the glass bottle option, don't they? Or maybe they don't. Green Entity says he's got Prime Mercer. Okay. One of the reasons I wouldn't pick Mercer over Mike Tyson is because Ray Mercer had a very close and competitive fight with Burt Cooper, and I think if you're going life and death with Burt Cooper, I reckon Mike Tyson beat you. Obviously, Holyfield went life and death with Burt Cooper, and Holyfield beat Mike Tyson, but, you know, yeah, I still got to go with Tyson. Yep, I remember Lucozade tablets. I used to OD on those. Yep, I remember when Snickers was Marathon too. What other chocolates did they change the name of? Because Marathon was the British name, and then they changed it to Snickers to match with the American name. But I swear there were some other chocolates, like American chocolates, that they changed the name of for the British market, but then eventually used the American name in the British market too. Big up Philip Answer in the chat. He says, "Did you already talk about Zufar?" Yeah, spoke about Zufar earlier on. But just briefly to recap, the first show was underwhelming. I liked the fact that there was a very short gap between the fights. That was cool. But there's no way that Callum Walsh should be headlining anything. He's just so dull. It's shocking. Yes, Georgie, Opal Fruits. That's right. Then they turned him into Starburst. That's right. What? Tony S says Milky Way in America is Mars in the UK. Is that correct? No, that can't be right. Mars bar is also Mars bar in the United States, isn't it? I swear it is. It doesn't even, because in the UK there is actually a chocolate bar called a Milky Way, but it's nothing like a Mars bar. It's got like, you know, it makes sense why it would be called a Milky Way, basically, because of the filling. Oh wow, BG says Lucas A glass bottle stopped in the mid-90s. Damn, that is how old I am. So I guess it's the same style of bottle that they have, but it's just plastic, not glass. Tasted way better when it was glass. Plastic bottles taint the flavor of anything. So everything tastes better in a glass bottle rather than plastic. Truth Channel says, who remembers Space Dust? I don't know about Space Dust. I remember them sherbet dip things you used to be able to get. Remember the sherbet dips? I remember Nerds, when Nerds came out, they actually got recalled for a while because glass was found in Nerds. I mean, what kind of sick, sadistic individual at the factory or whatever would be putting crushed up glass into kids' sweets? That's crazy. Dip dab. There you go, Tony. Yes. Dip dabs. Yes. That was that sherbet dip thing. That's right. Oh, yeah. And there was that exploding candy. That's what they call it in the United States. I can't remember the name of it, the version we had in the UK, but that popping candy you'd put in your mouth. Big up Mr. Luca for the super chat. Shout out to Mr. Luca every time. He's got his foot on Alexander Usyk's neck. Big up Mr. Luca. Big up Matt Borgerson. He says, I was looking at Ring 6 undercard. This Ziad Al Mayouf guy literally ruins the whole thing. That one matchup is so terrible for an opener. Yeah, that's Turkey Al Sheik's guy, isn't it? He's a Saudi, I think, young fighter. Yeah, I guess he makes Callum Walsh look like the most exciting fighter in the world. Big up Charlene. That's right, Opal Fruits. Then they got changed to Starburst. Matt Borgerson says he's terrible, painful to watch. I certainly wouldn't disagree. BG London says most British sweets and drinks had different ingredients in the 80s and 90s. Facts. Oh, yeah, of course they did. Yeah. Oh, that's well known. Yeah. I mean, I remember watching a video, it might have been a YouTube video, where I don't know how they did it, but somehow they got hold of cornflakes from the 1990s, Kellogg's cornflakes. And the amount of salt and sugar in Kellogg's cornflakes in the 90s compared to now was like crazy. Like cornflakes and most cereals in the 90s had way more salt and sugar in them than today. So they tasted way different. Truth be told, they tasted way better. Um, but I'm sure were far less healthy. Big up Matt Borges, and he says, shout out to Hammer Hands, high school friend. Yeah, big up Hammer Hands, Matt Borgerson's high school friend, if he's locked in. Big up Matt Borgerson too. Yeah, I remember eating both and being the shredded wheat man. That's right. And I'm sure they were full of sugar and salt too. DJ says Galaxy used to be called Dove. Is that right? That's something I don't quite remember. Ed Ellaby says, what was your go-to cereal? So there were loads of cereals that I liked growing up. I always liked cornflakes when they were absolutely covered in sugar. I'd take that teaspoon and put God knows how many teaspoons full of sugar on my cornflakes. Um, so I like cornflakes. I like Frosties, Cocoa Pops, Sugar Puffs. But I used to like a variety of different cereals. But I remember when a particular cereal came out, an American cereal, and I was all over them like white on rice. They were my favorite cereal for the longest time, and that was Golden Grahams. Anybody remember Golden Grahams? Oh my days. When Golden Grahams came out, bro, I didn't need any other kind of food. I could just eat Golden Grahams for, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I love Golden Grahams. Puffin cereal. Hang on, why does that ring a bell? With an actual puffin bird on it? Puffin cereal. Ready Break. Yeah, Ready Break was actually pretty good. Charles B says, yeah, he loved Golden Grahams too. Trolls are bad says, I miss how nice Lucozade used to be before they messed up the taste. Yeah, they just removed loads of sugar. Big up Luke Kielga, excuse me, for the super chat. He says, watch Gatty Ward 1 again recently. What would be your favorite fight or round of all time? Too difficult to say my favorite fight of all time or favorite round because there are just so many. But I will say that Nigel Ben Gerald McClellan's definitely one of my favorite fights of all time. One of my favorite rounds of all time would be Holyfield Bowl round 10 for the first fight. So big up Luke Elgar, I think it is. Excuse me, Luke Elgar. Yeah, they did a cinnamon golden grams. That's right. Cheerios were always good. I liked. God, I was just a sucker for all the different cereals. Um, what's the honey nut ones that are like? Um, they're like cornflakes, but they're honey nut flavor. What are they called now? Can't believe I forgot what they're called. Yeah, crunchy nut. Yeah, crunchy nut. Crunchy nut cornflakes. They're the ones. Yeah. We got Matt Borges, and he says America gets their cereal right. Diabetes is yum. British cereals are pretty damn good too. In fact, I actually prefer British cereals over American cereals. Um, Americans have got like Lucky Charms and stuff like that. I actually prefer British cereals. There are certain things I definitely prefer as far as American stuff, but British cereals and sweets and chocolates and confectionery and all that kind of stuff is pretty damn levels, to be honest with you. Yeah, because American stuff tends to just taste like sugar, right? And I like sugar, don't get it twisted, but it just tastes like just pure sugar, and there isn't that much other flavor in there. It's just pure sugar. Whereas with the British ones, yeah, back in the days, there was loads of sugar in them too, but they managed to have other flavors in there that made it more interesting. Big up Matt, he says the flavor profiles of food in the UK versus USA is shockingly different. Spice isn't nearly as tolerable in USA versus UK. Sugar profile stronger in USA too. Overall, um, in my experience, it's much easier to get nice food in the United States than it is in the UK, right? Overall, because the UK, United States is a much bigger country. You can go to certain parts of the US where food is good. But with regards to confectionery, like chocolates and stuff like that, and I'm going to include cereals in it, I prefer British confection, or at least back in the days. I don't know what it's like now. Back in the days, I prefer the British confectionery, British chocolates and biscuits and stuff like that to American ones. Um, but just in terms of like standard food, if you went for a steak or something, or Italian or whatever the case may be, generally, if you go to the right places in America, you're going to get better food than most places in the UK. Georgie says all brand was awful. Yeah, it tasted like a carb. It tasted like wet cardboard box. Charles B says the only American cereal I like is cinnamon toast crunch. Little Jacob says worst tasting for me was muesli. Yeah, muesli was a chore to get through. Matt Borgerson says I went to Queenstown, New Zealand. The food was amazing. Tawheed says who remembers Cocoa Pop straws? I mean, how's that for a gimmick? I think I actually do remember those. That was long after I left school, though. I'm not sure if I ever tried them. Maybe I did. Matt Borgerson says New Zealand has amazing food, period, and it's a solid country overall. I'm moving in with my wife in July. Okay, you're moving to New Zealand? That's a big move from the States. But if you're an outdoorsman, um, New Zealand's great, right? DJ says, who remembers Brannigan's crisps? Ham and mustard flavor would clear your blocked sinuses up real quick. Andrea Monique Tucker says, grape nut cereal was the worst. Don't think I ever had that. Tony S says, what's your go-to biscuit? Okay, so for American listeners and viewers, when we say biscuit, we're talking about cookies. We're not talking about, see, what Americans call a biscuit is actually a British scone. They actually serve that with fried chicken. They call it a biscuit, but in Britain, it's called a scone. Um, we're talking about cookies now. So my favorite cookies would be, I do like the honey flavored hobnobs. Is it honey flavor? They're like honey nut hobnobs or something. Those ones are nice. Do like them. Can't go wrong with a Jaffa cake, a light bite of delight. Yeah, Pop Tarts were literally hotter than the inside of a volcano, bro. They were hotter than flipping lava. Why were Pop Tarts that hot? They were so hot that people literally suffered injuries when they first launched in the UK. The filling was hotter than lava from a flipping volcano. People suffered injuries. They had to put warnings on the box because the Pop Tart filling was so damn hot. What's all that about? Matt Borgeson says, yeah, I don't like the current US climate, plus the USD is strong enough to transition. Damn, Matt says, wasabi peas with milk, don't knock it till you tried it. I'm not going to knock it, but I won't be trying it. I'll tell you that. Charles B says, chocolate digestive. Chocolate digestive is a classic. You can't go wrong with that. I remember microchips. Mm, vaguely rings a bell. Afro Soul says, shortbread. Shortbread's always good. Andrea says, I never put mine in the toaster, ate it right out of the wrapper. That's hardcore. I don't think I ever had a cold Pop Tart because the exterior of the Pop Tart, it doesn't look very appetizing unless it's toasted. Big up Tommy Garvey says, have you seen Begonia from last year, movie of 25? I haven't, but I have been told about that several times in previous streams. I'm going to check it out. Is that the one with the guy from Breaking Bad? You know, the guy that's part of that like Nazi group that kidnaps Jesse Pinkman? And there's like an autistic one of them. Is he the one that's in Begonia? Or am I tripping here? He almost looks like an albino or something. I don't know the actor's name. Okay, the Viscount. Oh yeah, who remembers the Viscount? Viscount biscuits. That's right. Tommy Gov says, gotta watch it. Yeah, he is great in that movie. Todd in Breaking Bad. That's the guy. Yeah, Todd. So it's the same actor. That the guy who plays Todd in Breaking Bad, he's in that movie, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, it's the same guy. Big up Tommy Gov. I'll definitely check that out. Matt Borgerson says it kind of reminds me of Philip C. More Hoffman acting wise. He has that monotone personality, but not with the heroin. Tef Vision says cornmeal porridge. Yeah, cornmeal porridge done right is levels. You gotta put the right amount of nutmeg in there, not too much. It has to be the right consistency. If it's too runny, it's no good. That's a whole fact, Tony. Yes, Nans and grandmas always had the best biscuits. TJ says, anyone remember Finder's crispy pancakes? I do, and yeah, I do remember them being pretty diabolical. Um, I remember them being diabolical. Another one that I remember from back in the days, my brother used to rinse these. Anyone remember Chicago Town Pizza? Obviously, we're all aware of Chicago pizza, but there was like a microwave version Back in the days of Chicago town pizzas, my brother used to rinse those. What? And they were pretty diabolical too. Matt Borgerson says, "You hear about that new Christian Bale movie?" No, what's the new Christian Bale movie? So other people know about Chicago Town Pizza. That was they were nasty. The Bride, okay, what's it about? There was Chicago Town. Finder's crispy pancakes were horrible. Um, what else was there now? There was like an old school. I think they still sell them. They do actually. Um, Free Bentos pies. That's real like 1980s struggle food. Free Bentos pies. Yeah, Christian Bale's a great actor. And as British actors go, I think he does the best American accents. Like, you can't fault Christian Bale's American accents at all. Charles B says, I like Frey Bentos, to be fair. Yeah, Frey Bentos had the gimmick of being a pie in a can with like puff pastry, or however you describe it. Is it puff pastry, phyllo pastry, whatever it is? Russ B says, serious deja vu listening to this horrible childhood food. Tony S says, I imagine John Partridge buying a Frey Bentos pie in his weekly Iceland shop. Andrea says, I didn't even know he was British until recent. Also, Andrew Garfield has a good American accent. Yeah, a lot of Americans are blown away when they find out that Christian Bale's British because he doesn't just do a great American accent, he also has this American Ivy League look about him, you know? His mannerisms and everything in movies and whatnot. Maybe because of the Batman and also American Psycho movies, you know? Well, the Batman movies and American Psycho as well. He's got that kind of Ivy League swag thing down to a T. BG says Frey Bentos corned beef. Did Frey Bentos make corned beef? Because we used to eat corned beef and rice a lot. But I don't remember Frey Bentos being one of the brands of corned beef. What are the main brands of corned beef? I forget the brand names. There was one Jamaican brand which would come in like a red tin. I can't remember what brand it was. And then there's the blue tin one, which is the British one. I think is it Princess corned beef. Grace, yes, Grace. That's the Jamaican one. Yeah, Grace. The Grace corned beef. And then the British one, I think, is it Princess? Tommy Gobb says that line about living long enough to become the villain is so prevalent in boxing. It is too. DJ says, remember Bernard Matthews' Turkey drummers? They were banging. Bernard Matthews, does that still exist? Bernard Matthews was a company that only sold turkey products. How weird is that? I guess he found a gap in the market, right? Because prior to Bernard Matthews, the only time people were buying turkey was at Christmas. And so he managed to flog turkey all the way through the year. Bernard Matthews or whoever owns that company must have made not even a small fortune, a large fortune back in the days. I always like that bit in The Office, the British version of The Office, where there's some kind of like office quiz, or is it a pub quiz? I think it's a pub quiz where members of the office go to a pub for a drink up or whatever, and David Brent obviously always likes to be the center of attention and act like he's the smartest guy in the room. And in the quiz, they ask him who's the leader of Cuba, and he says Fray Bentos. Who is Fray Bentos? Let me look that up, just out of curiosity, because it's a weird name for a British pie, isn't it? Fray Bentos, or a weird name for a British pie company. Why is it called Fray Bentos? Okay, Fray Bentos food brand. Who is it established by? I'm looking it up here now. Um, history. Wow, it goes all the way back to the 1800s, and it was founded by in Britain by a German chemist called Justus von Liebig. So where did the name Fray Bentos come from then? It's so random. So it was a German guy based in Britain who gave it a Spanish name. Is Bentos Spanish? It sounds kind of Spanishy. Uh, Bentos. That's surely not German, is it? The factory began manufacturing tin corned beef, which was sold in Britain under the name Fray Bentos. Yeah, it's a town in Uruguay. Oh, the factory. Okay, so this is a convoluted story. So a German guy in Britain started the company, but the factory was in Uruguay. And the name of the town that the factory was in was Fray Bentos. Okay. What an interesting and convoluted story. Big up, guys, for the super chat. It says, have you seen the butterfly effect? Thoughts? Yes, I have seen the butterfly effect. And I mentioned this in a previous stream, but originally the butterfly effect had several different endings, like alternate endings. And I remember watching the VHS version, which was rented from a local, video store. I don't think it was Blockbuster, although we might have rented it several times. Although we had a double decker uh, video cassette player, which could also record and copy video cassettes from Blockbuster and stuff like that. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, the butterfly effect had several different endings. It stars Ashton Kutcher and also the guy that was originally supposed to play Marty McFly in Back to the Future. What's that guy's name? He's also in Pulp Fiction. I forget the guy's name now. He was in it too, right? And he plays a nonce, if memory serves me correct. But Butterfly Effect was good. But even more interesting if you see the different alternate endings. Big up guys for the super chat. Big up Tommy Garvey says, if you were pro, would you trash talk opponents? That's a real good question. I think it would really depend. No, not Crispin Glover, not him. The guy that was originally supposed to play Marty McFly, not George McFly. Marty McFly was originally supposed to be played by a different actor. The guy that was in Pulp Fiction, he played I can't remember the name of the character in Pulp Fiction now. He's like a hippie skag dealer in Pulp Fiction. Would I trash talk opponents? I think it depends on who the opponent was. If I felt like trash talk would get under their skin, then I would. There you go. Charles B summed it up. He says, welcome to the night flight where discussions can be anything from Emperor Palpatine to Frey Bentos pies. Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding. Tony S says the official Frey Bentos YouTube channel has 4 videos on there, and lo and behold, they all have Big Johnny Bosch promoting them. Wow. Oh my days. But it does make sense. Tim Roth, thank you. No, not Tim Roth. Not Tim Roth. No, 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 no. He's not the guy that originally was supposed to play. Yeah, Lance. The guy that played Lance in Pulp Fiction. Not Tim Roth. Tim Roth played uh Eric Stoltz, thank you. Fernie G. Eric Stoltz is the guy I'm thinking of. Tim Roth played Ringo in Pulp Fiction. Eric Stoltz, that's the guy. Yeah. He was in Butterfly Effect, right? Little Jacob says, my favorite struggle meal back in the days. If you're talking about real struggle meals, like prison level struggle meals, you can't go wrong with a crisp sandwich. And in case there are Americans listening, what I mean is potato chip sandwich. Yeah. Like Lay's or Walker's, salt and vinegar flavor, inside 2 pieces of buttered bread, white bread at that. That's like prison level struggle food right there. Or stoner food, you know? It's also a stoner meal, isn't it? Little Jacob says, my struggle meal was corned beef, baked beans, and fried dumplings. So you guys are getting technical with it. Man's all frying dumplings out here. Yeah, crisp sarnies are banging. And they're so fast. White bread with some margarine on, stuffed with salt and vinegar crisps. Away you go. Funny G says, you haven't been down unless you've had powdered milk. Well, before we moved to the UK, powdered milk was our standard, you know? When I grew up with my family, we mostly had powdered milk. Powdered milk the ants would always like to get into, you know? Ali says, I never had meat from a can. Maybe I grew up too privileged. Oh, you can thank your lucky stars, you know? There you go. Now, see, now you're cooking on gas. Tony S says, I used to love tangy cheese Dorito sandwich. In fact, what sits in a sandwich is levels. What? What sits? Cheese what sits in a white bread sandwich? Levels. Yeah, that's levels. As I understand it, in American prisons, they have something like Watsons. Watsons are like, cornballs or something like, some kind of corn snack, cheese flavor. And they somehow put that into noodles, like ramen noodles or some crazy, some crazy thing where they put like cheese puffs into ramen noodles, and it sounds mad. There's probably a YouTube video on that somewhere. American prison food, how they're actually getting cheese puffs with ramen noodles, and yeah, it sounds mad. Big up Charles B for the super chat. He says this is a donation to young Hatman who had to bring his lunch to school in a margarine container. And that will go some way to easing the pain, because boy, did I get rinsed for that margarine container. The amount of fights I had to have over that damn margarine container. And it weren't even Flora. It was like no frills or own brand margarine from the supermarket. The supermarkets always do their own versions of everything. Big up Charles B every time. There you go. What's it sandwich with lashings of butter? For me, it was Marge, margarine on a what's it sandwich. Big up Tommy Garth. He says, I drown my chips in vinegar. So do I. I love the taste of vinegar. I also love lemon. Tommy Garth says, fish and chips is now 20 quid. Wow, that's steep. So the other calisthenics guy, Sean Gumby, talks about prison food, mackerel, eggs, and noodles on the commissary. That sounds horrible. Like mackerel, eggs, and noodles? That sounds diabolical, bro. Have I had tom yum soup? I don't think so. Um, because your taste buds, your palate is really formed as a child. So in the Bahamas, there's a lot of seafood, obviously. Conch salad, fried fish, lobster, shrimp, all that type of stuff. On conch salad, you're definitely putting lime juice and lemon juice on there. On fish, I'm always putting lemon on it. So even before we got to the UK, I always had a taste for like lemony things. So coming to the UK and having fish and chips with vinegar, obviously vinegar is a slightly different taste to lemon, but it's still sour. So I always like kind of sour tasting things. So yeah, I would drench fish and chips in all sorts of vinegar. The chips would literally be swimming in vinegar, bro. I'm not even joking. Like if I got chips in a tray, once the chips were done, there'd be like vinegar swirling around in a tray, and I'd drink it. Yeah, that's how hardcore I am, bro. Oh wow, Gorguga says margarine is a gray color in the factory. They color it yellow to resemble butter. Now that I didn't know. That's sinister. Ros B's got to be joking. He says raw garlic and peanut butter sandwiches. There you go, Charles B. That's the best bit. The shot of vinegar at the end. That's the coup de grace. It is the best bit. And by the way, I do the same with Turkish food. Like if I get a shish kebab in pitta, I absolutely drench it in lemon juice, bro. I use like 2 whole lemons, squeeze all the lemon juice all over that lamb shish so that the pita bread is soaking with lemon juice and also the juice from the lamb and the salad and whatnot. And the best bit is like mopping up the juice with the soggy pita bread. And one thing I've had out here, by the way, which I've never had before in my life, and before I came here, I thought, no, that sounds off. Out here in Southern Africa, sweet popcorn is not really a thing. Like some places do it, but most places do savory popcorn. And if you go to the cinema, they offer you like a different, bunch of flavors of popcorn. And one of the most popular ones is salt and vinegar popcorn. When I first heard about it, I was like, nah, salt and vinegar popcorn? But now that I've had it a few times, yeah, I actually like it. It's actually my go-to, salt and vinegar popcorn. Little Jacob says lamb kebab, oily as hell, and onion vinegar is the finishing touch. Salt and vinegar discos, what? Yeah, burn a hole in your tongue, that's right. You know, when I was living in the Middle East also, anyone who's ever been for Lebanese food will know that they have those vine leaves. So it's like vine leaves stuffed with rice. But I never liked them from Lebanese restaurants. But when I lived in the Middle East, right, in the Gulf, I went to like an authentic Arabic restaurant. I used to go to, many of them restaurants and takeaways, like proper Arabic restaurant food. And there was one place that sold those vine leaves, and they were absolutely banging, and they were sour as hell. They drenched them in like lemon juice and spices and and whatnot, and then let them Arab vine leaves with rice inside, drenched in lemon juice. Yeah, levels. Pickled onion, space raiders. There, that's an OG snack right there. Official to the bone gristle. There was also way back in the days just like Space Raiders, there was a type of crisps called meanies. Yeah, pickled onion meanies. I think they were made by KP. You know the company that makes Skips. Yeah, and Skips are banging as well, by the way. Prawn cocktail Skips, banging. But they made a type of crisp called meanies. They were like, corn puff crisps or whatever. They were banging too. If anyone remembers meanies. In fact, let me bring them up here. Bit of nostalgia. Meanies, pickled. Let's see if if it jogs anyone's memory. Because meanies were banging, bro. They used to come in 5p bags and also 10p bags. Wow, apparently they still sell them, but they're not the OG versions I remember. Yeah, these are the OG ones. Look, this is the big 10p bag. I think later on they had a 20p bag, but I swear I remember originally a 5p bag and a 10p bag. The picture I'm going to show you, these ones look like they've been uneaten for 20 odd years because it doesn't look very appetizing on the inside. This picture definitely wasn't taken in the 90s. They found these meanies lying around in a cupboard somewhere. Yeah, these are meanies. Pickled onion flavor. See that there, 10p. And that was back in the days when crisp packets actually used to be bursting full. Before they started that gimmick where they were only filling the crisp packet a quarter of the way and the rest of it is air. And they said, oh, yeah, we're doing it to keep the crisp fresh. No, you're not. You're doing it to rip us off, you jokers. But back then, a packet of meanies was full to the brim. It was bursting with crisps, bro. Yeah, Space Raider pickled onion, of course. That's the OG. But I want to say meanies were actually better. Meanies were a more dense bite. We're getting technical here, folks. They were a slightly more dense bite and super powerful on the pickled onion flavoring. I forgot to restart the background music there, folks. You guys have been listening to the hum of an air conditioner for the past couple hours. Sorry about that. Yeah, I always love hula hoops. Salt and vinegar flavor naturally. Hula hoops are levels. In fact, a hula hoop crisp sandwich is another struggle food go-to of mine. I play Resident Evil, not really. I do have, I think, the Resident Evil 2 remake, but I've never really played it. I think I played about an hour of it and just left it. Loads of people love it and rate it very highly, but I don't know, I just never got into it. Do you know an underrated biscuit that I always liked? Was gold. You know those gold bars? It's like a biscuit, white chocolate biscuit bar, but it's not really white chocolate. It's like gold chocolate. If you know what I'm talking about. Gold bars. They're levels, bro. Anyone know gold bars? You know what I'm talking about? They still sell them now. Yeah, it's like Caramac chocolate. Yeah, it's like Caramac chocolate, but with a biscuit filling, a biscuit interior. Yeah, exactly like that. Them gold bars, I don't know why no one talks about them. Top tier confectionery. Top tier. Yes, the McVitie's one. That's right, Ali. Yes, the McVitie's one. McVitie's gold bar. Big up Ocean Blue. A stupendous confectionery. I'm going to say that Britain is underrated. Bro, I've traveled around the world, all right? I'm going to say that Britain is criminally underrated in terms of the confectionaries. Like, British confectionaries are actually elite. Because if you're used to British confectionaries, when you travel to other countries, you're going to be, in most cases, disappointed. Especially compared to the old school British confectionaries. Afro Soul says McVitie's make the best cookies, I think. Core Guga says, was Penguin a choc biscuit or just a choc? They used to play on that, didn't they, in their adverts? Like, what is a penguin? Is it a biscuit or is it a choc biscuit? What is it? Penguins were cool. You know, I was never a massive fan of them. I didn't hate them. They were, you know, they were nice enough. But not like Gold Bar. Andrew Sims says, anyone remember Barry McGuigan's nettle flavor crisps? No, I can't say I do. All right, peeps. I'm going to shut this one down. Fasten your seat belts. Put your chairs back into an upright position. Stow the tray in front of you and prepare for landing. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on this night flight. I wish you a safe onward journey. Special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were. I can get the names up here. Give me a sec. This tab is taking forever to refresh. That's what it is. Let me try to open it up from scratch. Here we go. Viewer activity. Yep. So special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. They were James Clifford, GMS Nightmare, Charles B, of course, Danny, big up Danny, Green Entity, Southpaw Boxer, Mr. Luca, Matt Borgerson, big up Matt, Luke Elgar, big up Luke, Tommy Gov, that's my guy Tommy Gov right there, Gaz, Charles B, of course, big up Charles B each and every time. And yeah, shout out to everyone else for joining the conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. A little trip down memory lane, a bit of nostalgia. All right. Sponge cake and custard, apple crumble in the school dinner hall. All right, taking us back to the 80s and 90s. So yeah, have a good one, peeps. Enjoy your weekend. Catch you on the other side. I'm out.